Everyone talks about awakening as if it is only light. They speak about peace, higher consciousness, divine alignment, synchronicities, vibration, clarity, purpose, and the sudden feeling that the universe is no longer random. And yes, all of that can happen. There are moments in the awakening process when something ancient opens inside you. The veil becomes thin. Life begins to feel symbolic. You start seeing patterns where before there was only confusion. You sense that existence is deeper than the surface world you were trained to obey. But almost nobody tells you what comes after the first light. Because awakening is not only a doorway into beauty, it is also a doorway into everything you have spent your life avoiding. The moment consciousness begins to expand, it does not only reveal your divine nature, it also reveals your wounds, your illusions, your ego, your hidden motives, your attachments, your fear of being ordinary, your need to be special, your suppressed anger, your buried shame, your secret resentment toward people you claim to forgive, your dependency on approval, your spiritual pride, your loneliness, your hunger to escape your own humanity. This is the part of awakening most people do not want to face. They want the crown without the crucifixion. They want the light without the shadow. They want enlightenment without losing the false self that was blocking it. But true awakening does not decorate the ego. It exposes it. And this is why the spiritual path is not a comfortable walk into permanent bliss. It is often a descent into the hidden chambers of the psyche. A passage through everything unloved, unnamed, and unresolved within you. A confrontation with the parts of yourself that were buried, not because they were powerless, but because they were too painful to hold consciously. Awakening begins with revelation, but it continues through disillusionment. At first there is a sweetness. You begin to feel that reality is not what you thought it was. You discover consciousness, energy, vibration, synchronicity, ancient wisdom, meditation, the soul, the observer behind thought. You feel as if you have finally found the missing piece, and for a while the world becomes charged with meaning. But then something strange happens. The more conscious you become, the more aware you become of your unconsciousness. The more light enters, the more visible the dust becomes. The more truth you see, the harder it becomes to keep lying to yourself. And this is where many people become confused. They thought awakening would remove suffering, but instead it made them more sensitive. They thought it would eliminate fear, but instead it revealed how much fear had been running their life. They thought it would make them peaceful, but instead it exposed how much anger was hidden beneath their politeness. They thought it would make them feel above the world, but instead it forced them to see how deeply they were still attached to it. This is not failure. This is the real beginning, because awakening is not escaping the human condition. It is seeing it clearly. It is not becoming untouchable. It is becoming honest. It is not floating above pain. It is meeting pain without illusion. The first trap of awakening is the belief that higher consciousness means a life without darkness. This belief is seductive because it promises relief. It turns spirituality into a product. Do this meditation. Repeat this affirmation. Raise this frequency. Become enlightened. And then all your problems will dissolve. But the soul does not awaken through fantasy. It awakens through truth. And truth is not always gentle. Real spirituality does not numb you. It makes you more alive. And because it makes you more alive, you begin to feel everything you previously suppressed. The grief you intellectualized. The anger you spiritualized. The shame you covered with achievement. The emptiness you filled with noise. The childhood wound you called personality. the fear you disguised as logic. Awakening is not anesthesia. It is sensitivity returning. And sensitivity is painful when you have been living disconnected from yourself. This is why the shadow appears. Carl Jung called the shadow everything in us that we refuse to see. Not only evil, not only darkness, not only destructive impulses, but every rejected part of the psyche. The anger you were not allowed to feel. The desire you were taught to shame. The ambition you buried because someone called it selfish. The tenderness you hid because the world punished weakness. The creativity you abandoned because it threatened the identity you built to survive. The shadow is not only what is bad in you. It is everything you exiled from consciousness. And whatever is exiled does not disappear. It operates from the dark. It leaks into your relationships. It shapes your reactions. It controls your choices. It appears in the people you hate, the people you envy, the people you judge, the people who trigger you, the people who fascinate you in ways you cannot explain. This is projection. What you refuse to see inside yourself, you begin seeing outside yourself. You call someone arrogant because your own power terrifies you. You call someone selfish because you have abandoned your own needs. You call someone dramatic because your own emotions are locked in a cage. You become obsessed with another person's freedom because a part of you is still imprisoned. You resent someone's confidence because you were trained to shrink. Relationships are not random. They are mirrors, and the people who disturb you often carry fragments of your unconscious self. This does not mean everyone who hurts you is only a projection. It does not mean you tolerate abuse or blame yourself for everything. But it does mean that your strongest emotional reactions are often doorways. They reveal where your energy is trapped. They reveal what still needs integration. They reveal the places where your conscious identity is too small to contain the truth of your whole being. Most people want to become spiritual by becoming more pure. But real awakening requires becoming more whole. Wholeness means admitting that you carry contradictions. You can be loving and still angry, generous and still jealous, wise and still afraid, devoted and still proud, awake and still wounded, human and still divine. This is the paradox the ego hates. The ego wants a clean identity. It wants to be the good one, the awakened one, the chosen one, the conscious one, the one who has moved beyond lower emotions. So when the shadow appears, the ego panics. It says, "This cannot be me. I am better than this. I am more spiritual than this." But the shadow does not disappear because you reject it. It grows stronger. What you deny controls you. What you face begins to transform. Shadow work is not about worshiping darkness. It is not about excusing harmful behavior. It is not about saying every impulse should be acted out. It is the opposite. It is the disciplined act of bringing unconscious material into awareness so it no longer possesses you. Anger, when unconscious, becomes destruction. Anger, when understood, becomes boundaries. Fear, when unconscious, becomes paralysis. Fear, when understood, becomes courage. Envy, when unconscious, becomes resentment. Envy, when understood, reveals desire. Shame, when unconscious, becomes self-sabotage. Shame, when understood, reveals where love is needed. The shadow contains energy. A person who spends years suppressing themselves loses vitality. They become tired not only from life, but from the effort of hiding from themselves. It takes enormous energy to maintain a false image, to keep the skeletons locked away, to smile when the soul is screaming, to appear calm while the body carries war, to pretend forgiveness while resentment is still alive. Awakening releases energy because it stops the lie. But first, It makes you see the lie, and that is why it hurts. Then comes the ego. The ego is not your enemy. It is a structure, a survival mask, a psychological organizer built for memory, defense, identity, and adaptation. It helps you function in the world. It gives you a name, a story, a role, a position. Without some ego structure, you could not navigate ordinary life. But the ego becomes a prison when it believes it is the whole of you. The ego says, I am my past. I am my wound. I am my success. I am my image. I am what others think of me. I am my beliefs. I am my spiritual progress. I am my specialness. Awakening threatens this because awakening reveals that you are not the mask. You are the awareness behind the mask. You are not the story. You are the consciousness in which the story appears. And the ego does not surrender easily. It fights through fear, doubt, anger, resistance, spiritual comparison, control, intellectual arrogance. It may even use spirituality itself to survive. This is one of the most subtle traps, the spiritualized ego. The ego learns the language of awakening. It speaks about frequency, consciousness, energy, shadow, trauma, manifestation, divine timing, and enlightenment. But underneath the language, it is still seeking superiority, still seeking validation, still wanting to be seen as special, still dividing people into awake and asleep, higher and lower, evolved and unevolved. This is not awakening. This is ego wearing sacred clothing. A person can quote ancient wisdom and still be trapped in pride. A person can meditate daily and still avoid their wounds. A person can speak about love and still use spirituality to feel above others. A person can talk about consciousness while refusing basic humility. This is why awakening demands vigilance, not paranoia. Vigilance. You must watch the inner movements. Why am I saying this? Why do I need to be seen this way? Why am I using spiritual language here? Am I serving truth, or am I protecting an identity? Am I becoming more open or more judgmental? Am I becoming more loving or more superior? Am I dissolving illusion or building a more sophisticated one? The ego can survive anything except honest observation. When seen clearly, it begins to loosen, not through violence, through awareness. This is the practice of disidentification. You notice thoughts without becoming them. You notice emotions without drowning in them. You notice the need to be special without obeying it. You notice fear without calling it truth. You notice pride without feeding it. And slowly, something deeper begins to emerge. A silent presence beneath personality. A witness beneath reaction. A space inside you that does not need to perform. This is why humility is essential. Humility does not mean hating yourself. It does not mean pretending you are worthless. True humility means you no longer need to inflate the self because you are no longer trapped inside the false self. You can be powerful without superiority. You can be wise without arrogance. You can be spiritual without performance. You can be awake without needing to prove that others are asleep. Then comes the dark night of the soul. This is the stage many people mistake for failure. The dark night is not ordinary sadness. It is not just a bad mood. It is a deep spiritual stripping, a season when the old sources of meaning stop working. The beliefs that once comforted you begin to feel empty. The identity that once held you together begins to crack. The path that once seemed bright becomes silent. God feels distant. Purpose disappears. The inner world becomes dry, heavy and dark. You feel abandoned by the very truth you were seeking. But the dark night is not punishment. It is purification. It is the moment when the soul is separated from false light. Because many people begin the spiritual path still secretly wanting control. They want awakening to give them certainty. They want God to guarantee comfort. They want manifestation to protect them from loss. They want consciousness to make them invulnerable. They want spirituality to make life obey their preferences. The dark night burns this away. It removes the false contract you made with the divine. It shows you that truth is not here to serve your ego. It is here to liberate you from it. During this passage, you may feel lost, disconnected, lonely, empty, misunderstood. The things that once gave pleasure may feel hollow. The old version of you may no longer fit, but the new one has not arrived. You may feel suspended between worlds, no longer asleep, but not yet fully awake. This is the cocoon, and the cocoon feels like death to the caterpillar. Transformation is terrifying because something real is being asked of you. Not your words, not your beliefs, not your image, your surrender. The dark night asks you to stop resisting what is being dissolved. Because what we resist persists. Pain becomes suffering when the ego refuses the lesson. Darkness becomes transformation when you stop fighting the descent and begin listening inside it. This does not mean glorifying pain. It does not mean staying in destructive situations. It means understanding that some inner darkness is not there to destroy you, but to empty you of illusion. When everything false becomes unbearable, truth becomes possible. The dark night teaches a kind of faith that is deeper than emotion. Not faith because everything feels good. Not faith because signs are appearing. Not faith because life is easy. Faith in silence. Faith in uncertainty. Faith when the old map has burned. Faith when you cannot yet see what is being born. And when you emerge, you are not the same. The pain may not vanish instantly, but your relationship to it changes. You carry life differently. You become less performative, less naive, less hungry for spiritual decoration. You stop needing awakening to look beautiful. You understand that real transformation is often quiet, slow, and invisible. You become more human, and strangely, more divine. But there is another danger waiting after every breakthrough: spiritual superiority. As consciousness expands, the ego may return through the back door and whisper, "Now you are above them." Above the unconscious people. Above the materialistic people. Above the people trapped in ego. Above those who do not meditate, do not understand energy, do not question reality, do not speak your language. This is one of the most poisonous traps on the path. Because the moment awakening becomes a hierarchy, separation has returned. The ego has rebuilt itself inside the temple. True awakening does not make you look down on people. It makes you see how much suffering is hidden inside unconsciousness. It makes you more compassionate, not more arrogant. You begin to understand that everyone is fighting invisible battles. Everyone carries programming. Everyone carries wounds. Everyone is moving at the speed their nervous system can tolerate. Everyone is somewhere on the path, even those who appear lost. This does not mean you must stay around low consciousness environments. Discernment is necessary. Boundaries are necessary. Solitude is sometimes necessary. But superiority is not necessary. You can protect your energy without despising people. You can outgrow environments without turning others into enemies. You can walk your path without needing to prove that your path is higher. Humility is the safeguard. Service is the purifier. Because if your awakening does not make you more capable of love, then what exactly has awakened? If your knowledge does not make you more honest, what is it for? If your spiritual practice does not make you more compassionate, then it may only be strengthening the mask. True spirituality eventually leaves the private room and enters life. It becomes how you speak to people, how you handle conflict, how you treat those who cannot benefit you, how you respond when no one praises you, how you carry power, how you admit mistakes, how you apologize, how you serve. Awakening is not proven by visions. It is proven by integration. Can you remain conscious when you are triggered? Can you tell the truth when the ego wants protection? Can you feel anger without becoming cruel? Can you feel pain without creating a new identity around it? Can you hold your light without denying your shadow? Can you walk away without hatred? Can you love without possession? Can you become strong without becoming hard? This is the real path, not endless spiritual consumption, not collecting concepts, not chasing peak experiences, not calling every emotional high an awakening. The real path is integration, bringing consciousness into the body, bringing truth into behavior, bringing awareness into relationships, bringing humility into knowledge, bringing love into the places where fear used to rule. Awakening is not a final destination. It is an endless unveiling. Every layer you integrate reveals another layer beneath it. Every illusion you release makes you sensitive to a subtler one. Every truth opens a deeper question. You do not become finished. You become more honest, more transparent, more available to reality as it is. And this is the beauty hidden inside the darkness. The dark side of awakening is not against the light. It prepares you to carry it. Without shadow work, light becomes performance. Without humility, wisdom becomes arrogance. Without the dark night, faith remains childish. Without ego dissolution, spirituality becomes identity. Without integration, awakening remains fantasy. So if your awakening has become painful, do not assume you are lost. Maybe the false light is being removed. Maybe the shadow is asking to be welcomed home. Maybe the ego is losing its throne. Maybe the silence you fear is actually the space where something truer can finally speak. Maybe the darkness is not the end of your path. Maybe it is the passage that makes the path real. The goal is not to become less human. The goal is to become so conscious of your humanity that the divine can move through it without distortion. To love the light, but not fear the shadow. To seek truth, but not use truth as a weapon. To grow, but not turn growth into superiority. To awaken, but not abandon the world. To become free, but not forget compassion. Because consciousness is not here to make you untouchable. It is here to make you whole. And wholeness includes the wound, the shadow, the ego, the fear, the longing, the silence, the collapse, the rebirth, the humility, and the love that survives all of it. The dark side of awakening is not a mistake. It is the hidden initiation. It is where the spiritual fantasy dies and the real soul begins to breathe. And when you stop running from that darkness, when you finally turn toward it with courage, something inside you understands. The shadow was never there to destroy you. It was waiting to return your stolen energy. The ego was never there to be hated. It was waiting to be seen through. The dark night was never there to abandon you. It was waiting to strip away everything that could not come with you into truth. And awakening was never about escaping life. It was always about entering it fully awake. I wish you all the best. And until next time.